He wasn't supposed to notice her. Not in a place like this. Not on a quiet Thursday afternoon where nothing ever went wrong and the air smelled faintly of cut grass and distant coffee. But Rex didn't move. He stood there, muscles still, eyes locked, as if the world had narrowed down to one small figure on a wooden bench. The little girl sat with her feet not quite touching the ground, swinging them slowly, a faded blue backpack resting against her knees. She looked ordinary. Too ordinary. Brown hair tied loosely, a light jacket zipped halfway, sneakers scuffed at the toes like any other kid who'd spent her day running through playground gravel. And yet, Rex refused to leave her side. Not a growl, not a bark, just presence. Solid, unyielding. Staff Sergeant Daniel Hayes felt it before he understood it. That quiet shift in the air that only came when something unseen was out of place. Rex, he called softly, the command calm, practiced, the kind that had steadied chaos in places far less forgiving than this suburban park. Heel. The dog didn't respond. That alone was enough to tighten something in Daniel's chest. Rex had been through 2 deployments, through heat that shimmered at 110 degrees and nights that dropped into silence, so complete it felt like the world had stopped breathing. He had never ignored a command. Not once. Until now. A breeze moved through the trees, carrying the dry rustle of leaves and the faint laughter of children playing somewhere beyond the walking path. A jogger passed by, earbuds in, oblivious. A couple argued quietly near a parked car. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal. But Rex was not. The dog took one slow step closer to the girl, lowering his head just slightly, nostrils flaring as he drew in the scent around her. Not aggressive. Not curious in the casual way dogs sometimes are. This was deliberate. Focused. Controlled. Daniel's boots pressed softly against the gravel as he approached, each step measured, his instincts tugging at him in a way he hadn't felt since he left active duty. "Hey there," he said gently, his voice aimed at the girl now, careful not to startle her. She looked up at him, eyes wide but not afraid, just quiet. "Is he your dog?" she asked, her voice small, almost too soft for the open air. Daniel shook his head slightly. "No, ma'am. He's with me." Rex didn't look at Daniel, didn't acknowledge him. His attention remained fixed on the backpack resting against the girl's legs. The zipper was halfway open, just enough to reveal the edge of something inside, though from where Daniel stood, it was nothing more than shadow and fabric. "Rex," Daniel tried again, firmer this time. "Heel." Nothing. Not even a flick of the ear. Around them, the world continued without pause. A squirrel darted across the path. A car door slammed in the distance. The sun dipped just enough to cast longer shadows across the grass. But here, in this small circle of stillness, something was wrong. Daniel felt it settle deeper now, that quiet weight behind his ribs. He had learned to trust that feeling. It had kept him alive when logic failed, when information ran dry, when all that remained was instinct sharpened by experience. And Rex was instinct made flesh. The dog shifted again, this time lowering himself slightly, not sitting, not lying down, but bracing. Watching, waiting, as if the next moment mattered more than anything else. Daniel's gaze moved from Rex to the girl, then back to the backpack. Ordinary. It should have been ordinary. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lily," she replied, her fingers tightening slightly around the strap of the bag. "That's a nice name," Daniel said, though his eyes never left Rex now. The dog inhaled again, deeper this time, and then stilled completely. No movement, no sound, just a silent, unwavering focus that Daniel recognized all too well. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't protection. It was detection. And that's when the unease sharpened into something colder. Something real. Because Rex wasn't guarding the girl. He was watching the bag. "Before we begin, tell me, where are witching from? Drop your country in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story travels." Daniel did not move right away. That was the first rule he had learned when something felt off. Do not rush. Do not break the moment before you understand it. The gravel beneath his boots shifted slightly as he adjusted his stance, placing himself just a step closer, not between the girl and the dog, but near enough to read both of them at once. Rex remained fixed, his body aligned with the backpack, his breathing slow, controlled, almost too controlled. The kind of breathing Daniel had seen when the dog was working, when every sense was narrowed into a single purpose. Around them, the park continued its quiet rhythm, but now Daniel noticed the details he had ignored before. The wind carried a faint metallic scent mixed with something sharper, something out of place among grass and sunscreen and summer air. It was subtle, easy to miss, but Rex had not missed it. "Lily," Daniel said again, softer this time, lowering himself slightly so he was closer to her eye level. "Where are your parents?" The girl hesitated. Not long. Just enough. Her fingers tightened again around the strap of the backpack, knuckles paling slightly, as if the fabric itself held something important. "She is coming back," Lily said. Her eyes shifted, not toward the path, not toward the parking lot, but somewhere behind Daniel, as if she was repeating something she had been told rather than something she believed. Daniel followed her gaze briefly. A woman stood near the edge of the walkway, partially turned away, pretending to scroll on her phone. Mid-30s, maybe early 40s, well-dressed, but not remarkable. The kind of person who blended into a place like this without effort. Yet she had not moved closer. Not since Rex had stepped in. Daniel felt the weight of that detail settle into place. People usually came when a child was approached by a stranger. They asked questions. They closed distance. This woman stayed back. Watching. Waiting. Rex shifted again, and this time the movement was small but unmistakable. He lowered into a full sit. Straight. Rigid. His tail still. His ears forward. His eyes locked. Daniel's pulse slowed in response, not out of calm, but out of clarity. That posture was not random. That was trained behavior. Passive alert. The kind used when noise could make things worse. The kind used when certainty had already been reached. Daniel exhaled slowly, the air leaving his lungs in a controlled stream as he replayed the possibilities in his mind. Hazardous material. Medication. Something concealed. Something that should not be there. But there was something else, too. Something in the way the girl held the bag. Not casually, not loosely, but protectively, as if she had been told not to let go of it. "Lily," he said gently, keeping his voice steady, careful not to let urgency bleed into it. "Can you tell me what is in your backpack?" She looked down at it, then back up at him. "Just my things," she said. The answer came too quickly. Not rehearsed perfectly, but practiced enough. Daniel nodded slightly, as if satisfied, though his mind was anything but. "That makes sense," he said. "School stuff? Snacks?" Lily nodded, but her eyes flickered again, just for a moment, toward the woman in the distance. That was enough. Daniel did not turn this time. He did not want to break whatever fragile line of awareness was forming between all of them. Instead, he shifted his attention back to Rex. The dog had not moved. Not an inch. His entire body spoke in silence. "This is it. This is the point. Do not ignore it." Daniel swallowed once, the motion subtle, almost invisible, but inside, something had already decided. Rex had never been wrong before. Not in the field. Not in training. Not in the quiet spaces where instinct spoke louder than reason. And now, in a place where nothing was supposed to happen, that same instinct was telling him the same thing. There is more here than you can see. The breeze picked up slightly, brushing through Lily's hair, shifting the edge of the backpack just enough for the zipper to move a fraction of an inch. Rex's ears twitched. His posture did not change, but the intensity sharpened, like a line pulled tighter. Daniel noticed it immediately. That was the second signal. The first was stillness. The second was focus tightening. He had seen it before, in deserts and cargo yards and quiet checkpoints where the difference between safe and not safe came down to a single decision made in a single breath. Daniel leaned forward just slightly, his voice lowering as if the moment itself required it. "Lily," he said, almost a whisper now. "Would it be okay if I take a quick look, just to make sure everything is all right?" The girl did not answer right away. Her fingers tightened once more around the strap. And behind Daniel, somewhere just out of view, the sound of footsteps began to move closer. The footsteps behind him did not hurry, and that was what made Daniel turn, not out of alarm, but out of recognition. People who rushed usually had nothing to hide. These steps were measured, controlled, intentional. He shifted just enough to place himself slightly between Lily and the approaching figure without making it obvious. His posture relaxed, his shoulders loose, the way he had learned to stand when tension needed to stay invisible. The woman came into view fully now, her expression composed, almost too composed for the moment. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her tone light. but the edges of it were tight, like a string pulled too far. Lily glanced up at her, and for the first time, Daniel saw it clearly. Not fear. Not exactly. But hesitation. The kind that lived somewhere between trust and doubt. No problem, Daniel replied evenly, his voice steady, respectful, but firm enough to hold ground. Your daughter? The woman nodded quickly. Yes. Lily, come here. It was said like a command disguised as concern. Lily did not move. Not right away. Her hands remained on the backpack, fingers curled into the fabric as if it anchored her in place. Rex did not shift his attention to the woman. Not even a glance. That alone spoke volumes. The dog had already made his decision about where the threat lived, and it was not in the adult standing a few feet away. Daniel felt the space tighten, not physically, but in the quiet exchange of awareness between them all. The woman stepped closer now, her eyes flicking briefly to Rex, then to the bag, then back to Daniel. It was quick, almost invisible, but Daniel saw it. People always looked at what mattered most to them, even when they tried not to. He should not be that close, she said, her voice sharpening just slightly. She is scared of dogs. Daniel glanced at Lily. The girl shook her head almost. Imperceptibly. A small motion, but clear. He is trained, Daniel said calmly. He will not hurt her. The woman's smile appeared, but it did not reach her eyes. Still, I would prefer if you called him off. Daniel held her gaze for a second longer than polite, just enough to let silence do its work. I tried, he said. He did not respond. That changed something. Not visibly to anyone else, but Daniel saw it. A flicker. A break in control. It was gone in a heartbeat, replaced by the same careful composure, but it had been there. And Rex lowered his head slightly, inhaling again, deeper this time, the kind of breath that came right before confirmation locked in. His ears angled forward, his body tightening without moving, as if every muscle had aligned around a single truth. Daniel felt it land in his chest like a quiet echo. This was not uncertainty anymore. This was certainty waiting to be acknowledged. Lily, Daniel said gently, never taking his eyes off the woman now. Can you hand me the bag for just a second? The woman stepped forward immediately, too fast this time. That is not necessary, she said, her voice firmer, the softness gone. We are leaving. Her hand reached toward the strap, but Lily pulled it back instinctively. A small motion, but enough. Enough for Daniel to see the fracture in whatever story had been holding this together. Enough for Rex to remain exactly where he was. Unmoving, unyielding, as if the ground beneath him had decided this was the line that could not be crossed. The breeze picked up again, lifting a strand of Lily's hair across her face. She did not brush it away. Her eyes moved between Daniel and the woman, searching, uncertain. It will only take a second, Daniel said, his tone still calm, but now carrying something beneath it. Not authority. Not yet. But something close. The woman's jaw tightened. I said we are leaving. She reached again, this time more firmly, her fingers brushing the edge of the backpack. And that was when Rex made his first sound. Not a bark. Not a growl. Just a low, controlled exhale that carried weight. A warning without noise. A line drawn in air. The woman froze. Not because of fear, but because something in that moment shifted beyond her control. Daniel did not move. He did not raise his voice. He simply watched, letting the silence stretch just long enough to reveal what words would not. And in that silence, with Rex still anchored in place and Lily holding onto the bag like it mattered more than anything else she owned, the truth edged closer to the surface, waiting for someone to finally see it. Daniel felt the moment stretch thinner, like glass under pressure, where even the smallest shift could fracture everything. He did not reach for the bag. He did not step forward. Instead, he let the silence hold, because silence had a way of revealing what force could not. The woman's hand hovered near the strap, not touching it now, just close enough to claim it without actually doing so. Her eyes flicked once more to Rex, then to Daniel, measuring, calculating, searching for an exit that did not exist yet. There is no need for this, she said, her voice steadier again, but the tightness remained beneath it. We are just going home. Daniel nodded slowly, as if he understood, as if he agreed, but his gaze never left her. That sounds good, he said. Home is a good place. His tone was calm, almost reassuring, but there was a weight behind the words now, something grounded, something that did not move. Lily shifted slightly on the bench, her small shoes brushing the wood as her feet swung once, then stopped. She looked down at the backpack, then up at Daniel again, and this time there was something clearer in her eyes. Not confusion, not fear, but a quiet question. Rex remained seated, his body still aligned with the bag, but his breathing changed just enough for Daniel to notice. Slower, deeper, the kind of breath that came when a decision had already been made and all that remained was for the human to catch up. Daniel had seen that before. In training fields. In places where hesitation cost more than time. Lily, he said gently, his voice softer now, directed only at her. You can tell me if something does not feel right. The words hung in the air, simple, but heavy with meaning. The woman's expression tightened immediately. She is fine, she said quickly. She is just tired. Too quick. Too certain. Lily did not answer right away. Her fingers loosened slightly on the strap, then tightened again, as if she was holding on to two different choices at once. The breeze shifted direction, carrying that faint metallic scent again, sharper now, mixed with something chemical, something that did not belong in a child's backpack on a quiet afternoon. Daniel felt it this time, not just through Rex, but on his own senses, faint but present. Enough. Just enough. He exhaled slowly, his shoulders lowering, his posture easing in a way that looked like he was letting the moment go. It was intentional, a release to draw out truth. All right, he said, stepping back half a pace. No problem. The woman relaxed just a fraction. Not much, but enough for Daniel to see it. Enough for Rex to remain exactly where he was, unmoving, as if that small step back meant nothing at all. Because to Rex, it did not. The line had not changed. The focus had not shifted. Daniel's eyes dropped briefly to the ground, then back up, a subtle reset, a shift in approach. Lily, he said again, lighter now, almost conversational. Do you like school? The question was simple, harmless, the kind that lowered defenses. Lily nodded slightly. Yes. What is your favorite subject? He asked. Art, she said after a second. I like drawing. Daniel smiled faintly. That is a good one. He paused, then added gently. Do you have your drawings in your backpack? Lily hesitated again, longer this time. Her eyes moved to the bag, then to the woman, then back to Daniel. The woman stepped in closer, her voice firmer now. We are leaving, she said. Not a suggestion anymore. A directive. Her hand reached again, this time closing around the strap. And in that exact moment, Rex leaned forward just an inch. Not aggressive, not fast, but deliberate. A shift that carried meaning. The kind of movement that said the threshold had been crossed. The woman stopped. Completely. Her hand froze on the strap, her grip tightening instinctively. Daniel did not raise his voice. He did not move quickly. He simply spoke, quiet and steady, the kind of tone that carried authority without needing to prove it. Ma'am, he said, I am going to need you to let her hand me the bag. The park around them continued as if nothing had changed, but inside that small circle of space, everything had already shifted. Because now it was no longer about suspicion. It was about choice. And everyone standing there knew it. The words settled between them like a line drawn in quiet sand, and for a moment, no one crossed it. The woman's fingers tightened around the strap, her knuckles paling, her breath shifting just enough to break the illusion of control she had been holding so carefully. Daniel did not step closer. He did not raise his voice. He simply waited, because waiting, he had learned, often revealed more than force ever could. Rex did not move either. Not a muscle wasted. Not a sound made. But there was a change now, subtle and unmistakable. His body leaned forward just enough to signal readiness, his focus narrowing even further, as if everything in the world had faded except that single object resting against the girl's knees. Lily looked down at the backpack again, then slowly, very slowly, she loosened her grip. It was not a full release. Not yet. Just a softening. A question answered without words. The woman noticed it immediately. Lily, she said, sharper now, the softness gone entirely. Hold your bag. Lily flinched. Not dramatically, just a small tightening of her shoulders, a slight pull inward, like a child remembering a rule she did not fully understand but knew she was not supposed to break. Daniel felt it land in his chest, that quiet confirmation that something here was not right in a way that went beyond objects and explanations. It is okay, Daniel said gently, his voice calm, steady, directed at Lily alone. You are not in trouble. The woman stepped forward again, this time trying to close the space completely. We are leaving, she repeated, her tone firm, but beneath it, something frayed. Her hand pulled on the strap. And this time, Lily did not let it go. The movement was small, almost invisible to anyone not watching closely, but Daniel saw it. A child choosing not to release something she had been told to hold. Rex's ears shifted forward a fraction, his breathing tightening, the signal sharpening into something unmistakable. This was the edge. Daniel felt it too. That quiet moment where instinct stopped asking and started telling. He took one step forward, slow, deliberate, placing himself just close enough that his presence became part of the decision. Ma'am, he said, his voice still even, but now carrying weight that did not ask for permission. Let her hand me the bag. The woman's eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, the mask slipped just enough to reveal something underneath. Not panic. Not yet. But resistance. Calculation. A silent question of whether she could still walk away from this. Around them, the park continued to breathe, unaware, untouched, but here, time had narrowed into something fragile and exact. Lily's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted her grip. Then, almost as if the decision came from somewhere deeper than thought, she lifted the backpack just a few inches and turned it slightly toward Daniel. It was not a full offer. Not yet. But it was enough. Enough for Rex. The dog leaned forward another inch, his nose aligning with the opening of the zipper, his entire body held in perfect control, every movement precise, intentional. He inhaled once. Deep. Focused. And then he froze completely. More still than before. If possible. Daniel felt his pulse steady, not from calm, but from clarity. That was it. Confirmation. No doubt left. He reached out slowly, carefully, his hand open, non-threatening, his movements measured so as not to startle the girl. That is it, he said softly. Just like that. Lily's eyes lifted to his, searching, uncertain, but there was trust there now. Fragile, new, but real. The woman did not move. Her hand remained on the strap, but her grip loosened just enough to reveal what words had been trying to hide. And in that small release, the moment shifted completely. Because now, the bag was no longer just hers. It was shared. And once something is shared, it can be seen. Daniel's fingers closed gently around the edge of the backpack, not pulling, not taking, just holding it with her, creating a space where truth could exist without force. Rex did not break his position. His eyes remained locked, his body still, as if guarding not just the girl, but the moment itself. And in the quiet that followed, with 3 hands touching the same worn fabric and one dog holding the line between what was known and what was hidden, the truth waited just beneath the surface, one breath away from being revealed. Daniel did not pull the bag away. He did not rush to open it. Instead, he held it exactly where it was, his hands steady alongside Lily's, creating a quiet center in a moment that was beginning to fracture at the edges. The zipper sat half open, the teeth slightly misaligned, as if it had been closed in a hurry and never quite finished. Rex leaned forward just enough for his nose to hover near the opening, his breath slow, controlled, each inhale deliberate, as though he was reading something invisible written in the air. Then he stopped. Completely. No movement. No adjustment. Just stillness, so precise it felt unnatural. Daniel felt it immediately. That final confirmation. The kind that did not come from guesswork or instinct alone, but from something trained, tested, proven. Rex had reached certainty, and now the decision belonged to him. The woman's hand was still on the strap, but it had changed. The grip was no longer possessive. It was uncertain. Her fingers shifted slightly, tightening, loosening, as if she was deciding whether to hold on or let go, whether to stay or step back. Her eyes moved between Daniel and the bag, then briefly toward the path behind them, measuring distance, measuring time. This is unnecessary, she said again, but the confidence was gone. The words landed softer, thinner, like something repeated too many times to still hold weight. Daniel did not respond to her. Not yet. His attention remained on the bag, on Rex, on Lily. You are doing just fine, he said quietly to the girl, his voice low and even. Just keep your hands right there. Lily nodded slightly, her small fingers still gripping the fabric, But now there was something else in her posture. Not hesitation, not confusion, something closer to trust. The kind that forms in moments where a child decides, without fully understanding why, that someone is safe. Rex's ears twitched once. A single, precise movement. Then his head tilted just a fraction, aligning perfectly with the opening of the zipper. Daniel had seen that before. It was not curiosity. It was pinpoint focus. The kind that narrowed down to a single source. A single location. A single truth. The breeze moved again, lifting the edge of the backpack just enough for the fabric to shift. And in that movement, something inside pressed faintly against the lining, creating a subtle outline that had not been visible before. Not large, not obvious, but structured, deliberate. Daniel's eyes caught it instantly. Not what it was. Not yet. But enough to know it did not belong in a child's bag filled with drawings and snacks. His pulse slowed further, his breathing matching Rex's without thought, as if the two of them had slipped into the same rhythm, the same awareness. I am going to open it just a little more, Daniel said softly, still addressing Lily, not the woman. All right. Lily hesitated for a second, then nodded. The woman stepped forward again, sharper this time. No, she said, her voice breaking through the calm. That is enough. But she did not pull the bag away. She did not remove her hand. And that contradiction spoke louder than anything else. Daniel moved carefully, his fingers sliding along the zipper, not jerking it open, not creating sudden motion, just easing it forward 1 inch at a time. The sound was soft, barely audible, but in that silence, it felt louder than anything else. Rex did not blink. His entire body remained locked in position, as if the outcome had already been decided and he was simply waiting for the human world to catch up. The zipper opened another inch, then another. The gap widened just enough for the contents inside to become more than shadow. Daniel leaned slightly, his gaze narrowing, his focus sharpening. He did not reach inside. Not yet. He only looked. And in that moment, something shifted behind him. A step. Quick. Then another. The woman's posture changed completely, the hesitation gone, replaced by urgency. Not loud, not chaotic, but unmistakable. She was about to act. Daniel felt it without turning, the way a storm can be felt before the first drop of rain. But Rex did not move. Not toward her. Not away from the bag. Because whatever was inside mattered more. And Daniel understood why. Because now, through that narrow opening, through that carefully controlled space, the truth was no longer hidden. It was visible. And it was not what anyone standing there had expected. Daniel did not need to open the bag any further to understand that something was wrong, but he did anyway, because understanding was not enough anymore. Proof mattered now. The zipper slid another inch, and the shape inside resolved into something clearer, something that did not belong in a child's world of crayons and paper. It was a small plastic pouch, sealed tightly, containing several pre-filled syringes neatly arranged in foam, alongside a folded stack of documents that had been handled too carefully to be casual. The labels were partially visible, medical in nature, precise, clinical, and entirely out of place. Daniel's breath slowed, not from calm, but from control. This was no longer a question. This was an answer. Rex remained perfectly still, his nose hovering just above the opening, his body aligned with quiet certainty. He had done his job. Now it was Daniel's turn. Behind him, the shift he had felt moments earlier became movement. The woman stepped in quickly, her hand moving from hesitation to action, reaching not for the bag this time, but for Lily's arm. "We are leaving," she said, her voice no longer controlled, the edges sharp now, urgent. Lily flinched, her body pulling slightly away, her grip tightening on the backpack again, as if the object itself had become something she needed to protect rather than surrender. Daniel moved then. Not fast, not aggressive, just enough to close the space and place himself firmly between them. His hand remained on the bag, steady, anchoring the moment. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low but unyielding, "we need to slow this down." The woman stopped, her eyes locking onto his, the calculation now replaced by something else. Not panic, but exposure. The kind that comes when a hidden truth is no longer hidden. "You do not understand," she said quickly. "Those are prescribed. She needs them." The explanation came too fast, too rehearsed, and it did not match the way Lily had reacted, the way she had hesitated, the way she had looked for permission instead of certainty. Daniel glanced down briefly at the documents. Names did not match. Dates were inconsistent. Details that should have aligned did not. He had seen enough paperwork in his life to know when something was real and when it was constructed to look real. "Lily," he said gently, shifting his attention back to her, softening his tone again. "Do you know what those are?" She shook her head slowly, her eyes wide now, not with fear of the dog, not with fear of Daniel, but with something deeper. Confusion. Uncertainty. The kind that comes when a child realizes the world is not what she thought it was. Rex finally moved, but only slightly. He lifted his head just enough to look at Lily, his amber eyes softening, his presence shifting from alert to something else. Reassurance. The woman took a step back. Just one, but it was enough. Enough to show that whatever control she thought she had was slipping. Around them, a few people had begun to notice. Not many, just enough for awareness to ripple outward. A man paused on the path. A woman slowed her walk. The normal rhythm of the park began to bend around the stillness at its center. Daniel reached for his phone with his free hand, never taking his eyes off the woman, never releasing the bag. "We are going to get some help," he said calmly, "just to make sure everything is all right." The woman's jaw tightened, her eyes flicking once more toward the path, toward the exits, toward the spaces that had been options only moments ago. But those options were closing now, quietly, without force, without noise. She did not run. She did not argue further. She simply stood there, the story she had been holding together unraveling in the quiet space between them. Lily's grip on the backpack loosened again, this time not from hesitation, but from release. She looked up at Daniel, then down at Rex, and for the first time since this began, her shoulders dropped, just slightly, as if something heavy had been lifted without her fully understanding why. Rex lowered his head again, but not toward the bag this time. Toward her, close enough for her to feel his presence, close enough to remind her she was not alone. And in that moment, as the truth settled fully into place, Daniel understood something simple and profound. Rex had never been guarding the bag. He had been guarding her from it. The sound of distant sirens did not arrive all at once. It came in layers, faint at first, carried by the wind like something uncertain, then gradually clearer, steady, inevitable. Daniel did not turn toward it. He did not need to. The moment had already passed the point where escape was an option. The woman stood still now, her posture no longer calculated, no longer controlled, but held together by something quieter. Not resistance, not surrender, just the absence of a plan. Her eyes no longer searched the exits. They rested somewhere lower, unfocused, as if the weight of what had been uncovered had settled in fully. Lily shifted on the bench, her small frame leaning slightly toward Rex without thinking, her shoulder brushing the dog's fur. Rex did not react with movement, only with presence. Solid, grounded, the kind of presence that does not ask anything in return. Daniel kept one hand on the backpack, the other lowering slowly as he finished placing the call, his voice calm, precise, giving just enough information without urgency, because urgency had already done its work. Around them, the park had changed in subtle ways. People were no longer just passing by. They were watching now, quietly, respectfully, keeping their distance but aware that something important was unfolding in the space they had nearly overlooked. A man stood with his hands in his pockets, pretending not to stare. A woman paused with a stroller, her gaze soft but attentive. The ordinary world had not stopped. It had simply leaned in. Lily looked up at Daniel, her voice barely above a whisper. "Am I in trouble?" The question landed gently, but it carried the weight of everything she did not understand yet. Daniel knelt slightly, bringing himself closer to her level, his expression steady, his voice warm in a way that did not overpromise. "No," he said. "You are not in trouble." He paused, just long enough for the words to settle. "You did exactly what you were supposed to do." Lily blinked, her eyes searching his face as if trying to understand how that could be true. She had not done anything. She had just sat there. And yet somehow, that had been enough. Rex shifted then, finally, but only to reposition himself slightly closer to her, his shoulder pressing gently against her leg, a quiet anchor in a moment that still felt uncertain. The sirens grew louder now, no longer distant, their presence moving closer with each passing second, but still not overwhelming, not chaotic, just steady, like a promise arriving. The woman exhaled slowly, her shoulders lowering as if something inside her had finally released. She did not speak again. There was nothing left to say that would change what had already been seen. Daniel rose back to his full height, his posture relaxed but aware, his attention moving briefly across the small crowd, then back to Lily, then to Rex. The dog's focus had softened completely now. The sharp edge of detection was gone, replaced by something quieter, something warmer. His job, as he understood it, was finished. What remained was simply to stay. The first patrol car rolled into view at the edge of the park, its lights muted in the late afternoon sun, not flashing aggressively, just present, just enough to signal that help had arrived. Another followed behind it, slower, deliberate. The world did not rush in. It approached carefully, respecting the stillness that had already done the hardest part. Lily's grip on the backpack loosened entirely now, her hands falling gently into her lap. She did not look at it again. Whatever it had been, whatever it had meant, it no longer held the same weight. Instead, she looked down at Rex, her small hand hesitating for just a moment before reaching out and resting lightly against his fur. Rex did not move. He did not turn. He simply remained there, steady as ever, accepting the contact without needing to acknowledge it. Daniel watched that small moment, the quiet exchange between a child and a dog who had seen something she could not, and understood something simple. Not every rescue looks like movement. Sometimes it looks like stillness. Sometimes it looks like a dog refusing to walk away. The officers stepped closer now, their voices low, controlled, their presence calm as they approached the edge of the moment Daniel and Rex had already held together. And as the world gently began to take over, as questions would be asked and answers would follow, the most important part had already happened in silence, in instinct, in a quiet decision made by a dog who chose not to leave. The sirens faded into the background as quickly as they had arrived, not because they were gone, but because the moment no longer belonged to them. It had already settled into something quieter, something deeper than flashing lights or official voices. Daniel stood a few steps back now, his hands empty, his posture no longer carrying the weight of decision but the stillness that follows it. The officers spoke in low tones nearby, their words measured, careful, guiding the situation into something structured, something documented, something that could be explained in reports and statements. But what had happened here did not begin with procedure, and it would not be remembered that way either. Lily remained on the bench, her small hand still resting lightly against Rex's fur, her fingers moving just enough to feel that he was real, that he was still there. She did not ask more questions. Not yet. Some truths arrived slowly, not all at once, and something in her seemed to understand that. Rex stayed beside her, his body relaxed now, his breathing easy, the sharp edge of his focus gone completely. He was no longer searching, no longer watching for what could not be seen. He was simply present, the way only a dog can be, without expectation, without judgment, without needing to understand the full weight of what had just unfolded. Daniel watched them for a moment, the quiet connection between them, and felt something settle in his chest that he had not felt in a long time. Not relief, not pride, something softer, something closer to grace. The woman was guided gently away, not with force, not with raised voices, but with the kind of calm that comes when resistance has already dissolved. She did not look back. Not at the bag, not at Daniel, not at the child she had stood beside only minutes ago. Whatever story had brought her here had ended, not with confrontation, but with stillness. And sometimes, Daniel thought, that was the only way truth could truly be seen. The late afternoon light shifted across the park, stretching longer shadows across the grass, softening the edges of everything it touched. The world, which had leaned in so quietly, began to lean back again. Conversations resumed. Footsteps continued. Life moved forward in the same steady rhythm it always had. But for one small corner of that park, something had changed in a way that would not be forgotten. Lily looked up at Daniel again, her eyes clearer now, not searching, not uncertain, just present. "Is he yours?" she asked, her voice gentle as her hand brushed against Rex's shoulder once more. Daniel smiled faintly, the kind of smile that did not need to be wide to be real. "He is my partner," he said. Lily nodded, as if that answer made perfect sense, as if there was no other way to describe what she had just witnessed. She looked back at Rex, then leaned just slightly closer, resting against him in a way that felt natural, unforced. Rex did not move. He simply accepted it, the same way he had accepted everything else, without question, without hesitation. Daniel crouched down beside them, his hand reaching out to rest gently on Rex's back, fingers pressing lightly into the thick fur. For a moment, the three of them remained there, connected by something that did not need words. The kind of connection that forms when fear is replaced by understanding, when uncertainty gives way to quiet safety. Daniel leaned forward just slightly, his forehead touching Rex's for the briefest second, a gesture so small it could have been missed if someone was not looking closely. But it was there, a silent acknowledgement, a thank you that did not need to be spoken. Rex blinked slowly, his eyes soft, as if he understood in the only way that mattered. The officers approached again, one of them kneeling gently beside Lily, speaking to her in a calm, reassuring tone, explaining what would happen next, where she would go, who would make sure she was safe. Lily listened, her hand never leaving Rex until the very last moment, when she finally lifted it, hesitating just a second before letting go. Daniel watched that moment carefully, the way her fingers lingered in the air, as if memorizing the feeling, as if holding on to something she did not yet have words for. Rex remained still, watching her, not following, not pulling away, just allowing the space to grow naturally between them. Because his work was not to hold on. It was to stand when it mattered. As Lily was gently guided away, she turned once, just briefly, her eyes finding Rex again. No words, just a look. And in that look, there was something simple and profound. Recognition, not of what had happened, not of the danger she had been near, but of the presence that had stayed when everything else felt uncertain. Daniel stood up slowly, his hand resting once more on Rex's back as he looked out over the park, now returned to its quiet normalcy. The wind moved softly through the trees, carrying with it the same scent of grass and distant life, unchanged, indifferent, steady. He exhaled, long and slow, and for a moment, he allowed himself to feel the weight of it all, not as a burden, but as something meaningful. Because some stories do not end in victory. They end in something quieter, something steadier. They end in the simple truth that sometimes, the difference between what is seen and what is understood is only one silent signal away. And sometimes, that signal does not come from a voice at all. It comes from a dog who refuses to walk away. In this deeply emotional and cinematic journey, a U.S. Marine and his loyal German Shepherd encounter a quiet moment that turns into something far more meaningful when the dog refuses to leave a little girl sitting alone in a peaceful park. What begins as an ordinary afternoon slowly unfolds into one of those unforgettable animal stories where instinct speaks louder than words and a silent signal reveals a hidden truth that no one else could see. As the Marine carefully observes his partner's behavior, he realizes that this is not protection in the usual sense, but something deeper, something trained, something urgent, and through patience and quiet strength, he uncovers a situation that changes the course of a child's life. This story stands among the most powerful animal stories because it captures the unbreakable bond between a Marine and his canine, showing how loyalty and intuition can become a form of grace in moments where danger is invisible. Without dramatic action or loud confrontation, the tension builds through subtle movements, shifting eyes, and the quiet refusal of a dog to walk away, making it one of those rare animal stories that rely on emotional depth rather than spectacle. As the truth emerges through a simple backpack and a series of small, human decisions, the story reminds us that sometimes the greatest acts of courage are silent, and sometimes protection comes in the form of presence rather than force. This unforgettable narrative belongs among the most meaningful animal stories because it highlights how a trained German Shepherd can sense what others miss, and how a Marine's trust in that instinct can save a life without a single shout. In the end, what remains is not just the resolution of a hidden danger, but a quiet moment of connection between a child and a dog who chose not to leave, proving once again why stories like this continue to define the heart of animal stories and why they resonate so deeply with audiences seeking truth, loyalty, and the quiet miracles that live between them.